Welcome to another episode of Patio Pondering Podcast. I'm continuing the stream of talking to friends I've met on Ag Twitter over the last decade or so, with talking with Hayden and Mary Heigele from Longford, Kansas. It's really cool to talk to these two young people because I've kind of watched them make their transition from college to real jobs to entrepreneurship, and even got to watch their wedding vicariously through social media. It's really cool talking to them. And Hayden, I'm just going to put some bars out. We can't talk about the time that you and I spent together in Aggieville a few times a year. That would be incriminating for me, at least. So thank you two for joining us today. What's happening on the farm today?
I just got done feeding our cow-calf pairs on my family's farm, and my brother and I tagged the newborn calves that we had today. We're in the middle of calving season here in north central Kansas.
And we just got some propane delivered, so that's exciting. Yeah.
Yep.
Very good. Awesome. Well, why don't we just take a quick minute or two, Mary, why don't you start us off and talk about your background in ag, kind of how you grew up, a little bit about your education and what you're doing today.
Yeah. So I grew up in Northern California. My parents grow, I'm going to say this one time, almonds, but out where I'm from, we call them almonds for Blue Diamond. So grew up farming with my mom and dad, was active in all of the farm kid activities, 4-H, FFA, all the way. Then when it came to choosing colleges, I was looking around for good agricultural communications and journalism schools, and Kansas State kept popping up at the top of the list. And I applied, got in, and they did a really good job of offering scholarships that made it very, very affordable to go to, even though I was an out-of-state student, and chose the purple route and haven't looked back since then. Graduated with an ag comm degree in May of 2020. So I was a dropout with a degree because we didn't get graduation, but ended up working in agriculture aftermarket planter parts. So it's allowed me to learn more about how Midwest agriculture works and grain farming, because I can dig a hole with a shovel like a gopher, but the whole precision thing was a different field altogether. So that's how I've ended up where I am today.
Okay. Hayden? I know that you're on the family farm now, but how did you spent your time on the family farm? And if you search for Hayden Heigele, Clay Center, Kansas, it brings up football stats from 2013.
Oh, man.
You had one tackle in a game against Wamego.
Bill Snyder, he had to keep hanging up the phone on him.
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
So I grew up in Longford, Kansas, and I went to high school in Clay Center, Kansas, where I was very active in 4-H and FFA. And when I graduated Clay Center in 2016, I went to Kansas State University, where I studied agronomy with a focus in precision agriculture, which was the hot big thing at the time. And I joined the Alpha Gamma Rho fraternity.
Well, we won't hold that against you.
Our wedding was extra fun. My dad was an AGR at Chico State, so
Oh no.
it was a good time. It was a really good time.
Sweet. And then after school, Hayden, you went and worked for another farmer for a while, right?
Yep. So in 2020, I graduated from Kansas State, and I moved to Andale, Kansas, to work on a farm near Mount Hope, which is on the west side of Wichita, Kansas. It was a large grain farm in the area, and I heard about this job through my connections at Kansas State, and I worked there for 2.5 years, starting right after college to the end of 2022.
Cool. And that is a different part of Kansas. And for my audience that isn't familiar with Kansas, the topography and the climate that changes in that state is crazy. You go from northeast Kansas, Leavenworth area, that is not much different than Iowa. from a rainfall and the crop standpoint, a little hillier than Iowa. And you get down to southwest Kansas, Finney County, Garden City, that's almost desert. And you could call it the panhandle of Texas. It's so dry. You got tumbleweeds. I remember once driving to ultrasound some pigs, driving along the road in the one of the cars from the animal science department, dodging tumbleweeds in that part of the world. I mean, tumbleweeds half the size of the car. So that's interesting how the topography changes. And you were west of Wichita. It's kind of that dry, a lot of wheat, maybe the background of some calves. Was that kind of a fair description of where you were?
Yeah, in southwest Sedgwick County, it's relatively flat compared to what I'm used to. And their smallest fields were like 80 acres that didn't touch something else, and not as many waterways. And the farm I worked for didn't have any livestock at the time, and it was a little bit different from my family's farm. They had mostly wide row spacing, like 30 inches, and it was a very well ran grain farm. They had quite a bit of irrigated ground where they did irrigated corn and soybeans.
Okay.
And dryland wheat and dryland soybeans, and of course dryland corn and milo.
Interesting your experience you had there in Andale. And working with the irrigation, I'm sure, was a new challenge for you compared to what you grew up with on your farm.
Yeah, I learned a lot about working on pivots. They didn't have cows that got out, but almost not every day. But it felt like every day there was a problem with one of the pivots that needed addressed, either a flat tire or I never got to work on a gearbox going bad, but I heard those are a pretty big deal. Pivots getting stuck was very, very common, the way their soils are, and they're trying to keep ahead on the irrigation schedule, and they'd get stuck and then out of line, and it was almost a 2-person job pulling those back out.
Wow. So running irrigation is almost like having a mistress in the summertime.
It doesn't matter what time of day it is. They'll call you even if it's during church.
That's right. It's like, hey, come on, I need service.
Yeah, the phone rings and I just get in the pickup and,
hey, baby, what are you doing?
That's right. I get a flat tire.
Can you come over?
Can you come over? Yeah, it's an interesting booty call in the irrigation field.
Yeah.
Let's say it first. That's the first booty call we've had on the podcast. Mary, yep. I'm going to dig into you.
Kept it spicy that summer.
Spicy. And speaking of spicy, we're going to jump onto almonds.
Yeah. My favorite topic.
Your favorite topic?
Yeah.
I just threw out my Blue Diamond almonds that went rancid.
Oh,
what is one of the things that you noticed or that struck you as a difference in ag between California, Northern California, which is different than Southern California, and Kansas?
So actually the best thing to talk about would be the similarities. You wouldn't think that being in a completely different climate, thousands of miles away, would be so similar. But a lot of the issues that are affecting, especially Southwest Kansas in particular, so even though that's 5 hours away from Longford, they have similar issues. So when it comes to water quality, water quantity, labor issues, it's really similar to California. And so it's really fun talking to people. Fun is an interesting word, but to describe that. But it's really interesting to talk to people down there because I understand what they're dealing with compared to back home. The biggest difference, though, would be the amount of labor that you need to produce crops. Out here, you need operators for equipment, but you don't necessarily have the hand labor that you do out west. Some of our crops, well, one of the similarities on labor would be maybe roguing crews, but outside of that, a lot of our work is just pruning. That's a huge part of what goes on, especially during the winter time. And so that's just a lot of hand labor. We have polling crews every now and then. So you take a bamboo pole and you try to tap off the individual nuts off of the tree that didn't come off during harvest. If they stay on the tree, they can have diseases and pests that'll infect your next crop. So that's really important to get that off. And also, you can't get paid for your almonds if they're not going to the Polar Shell or then Blue Diamond. But that was the biggest difference. What I saw. But.
Now, you don't work with labor in your job here in Kansas, do you?
No. With Hayden's farm, those guys have been working for Grandpa Fred for a while, and Grandpa Fred's the head honcho out here, so he's.
But you don't have to work with H-2As or green cards or anything like that. No,
okay. not for us. And so frankly, I'm glad. That sounds like a nightmare and a headache. And
oh, totally. The farm that your parents have, are they dealing with U.S. labor, H-2A labor, day workers? It being in Northern California, it's not close to the border, so it's a little different. But what kind of labor are they working with?
Yeah, so since my mom does the books for the family farm, she also wants the labor to make sense and be kind of on the easy end of things. And so we've been really lucky. We've had one employee since I was in high school. So getting to be about 12 years now. And he's legal, citizen, all the good stuff. So it makes it easier for her on the bookkeeping end. You hear about a few folks out there who try to do the H-2A route. And it works for some guys, doesn't work for others. I'm really glad that we were never on trying to do a labor contracting. We never dove into that because I can see that getting really complicated, because I do think they take advantage, or not take advantage, poor word choice, but they utilize H-2A working visas.
So when you're talking about the crews that come through pulling the trees and pruning, those are contract labor. You pay somebody, come in, and their crew does the work.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
All right. So that alleviates some of the labor issues that you might have by contracting out that manual labor.
Definitely. Cool.
So your experience on working on a tree farm is completely different from a perception standpoint from a typical farm that we think of. And most of my audience that listens thinks of the farm as corn, soy, baby wheat, and some cattle. Mm-hmm. What was the transition like for you when you had to come and help Hayden and his father and grandfather in their farm, as far as the labor and how you could help and how it was different?
The machinery is huge out here. We're used to the smaller tractors. We're used to kind of equipment being really compact. And out here, the big old combines, those are amazing. If that doesn't make you feel like an American, sitting in one of those bad boys or anything, you're not living, son. And so that was the biggest shift. And granted, we had a lot of combines out west because we're in rice country too. And so combines weren't out of the ordinary to see. I just never got a chance to run one or sit in one or any of that, because that's just not what we did.
It's a big difference from seeing it at 55 miles an hour on the road to standing in it, standing on it, by it. It's, that's it.
Working on it.
Yeah.
Oh,
when you're driving by, you never see the guy, torso deep in this bad boy ripping out soybeans.
That never happens.
No. And so that was probably the most interesting part, was the equipment changes. And then obviously tying into planters was amazing, because that's so precise. You can get so far into the weeds on what works, what doesn't work, how one worn out piece can impact your final yield. Mm-hmm. So the equipment has been the biggest shift. And then how guys have cattle to kind of offset kind of the slower winter time. And then so it just feels like a mad dash year round. And with the almonds, there's always a task to do throughout the year. You always have harvest, the mad dash. Then you have the pruning in the wintertime, and then it's bloom, and you're constantly spraying. You're constantly staying on top of weeds and pests, and so it's just a much different pace of
Right.
farm life.
I gotcha. But you're dealing. I like the way that you brought up that you're dealing with water issues because your water's allocated in
Mhm.
California.
Yep.
Parts of Kansas, the water's allocated too. You're worrying about snowpack melting coming off the mountains, whereas the Kansas and Nebraska farmers worried about how much water is left in the Ogallala aquifer. So I can see the similarities.
Mm-hmm.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
And water is the fruit of life. I mean, if we don't have water, we don't have anything. So the stress that is put on the almonds or the alfalfa production or the cattle that's universal in ag.
Right. You can always connect with somebody about what they're dealing with when it comes to water. Hayden's old boss had a saying that it doesn't matter if it doesn't rain.
Yeah.
And it's amazing how much that applies to all facets of life.
Yeah, that's right. So
We'd
hey,
be worrying about something, or like, oh, should we do this? Should we do that? And we kind of go back and forth, and it's kind of like, we gotta, get moving. And then he'd be like, well, if it doesn't rain, it's all going to be screwed anyway, and this crop isn't going to be anything. I was
that's
like,
right.
yeah, no,
That's
do
right.
the right thing
Yeah.
this time.
So Hayden, you're Kansas State. Wearing
Yeah.
purple, spending some time in Aggieville with your friends from AGR and at the AGR Annex House, right?
Yeah.
I have to thank Shelby for enlightening me about the Annex House with the bicycles.
Yep.
You saw Mary.
Mhm.
Started hanging out with Mary. She's kind of cool. And then you
Yeah.
said, hey, let's make a trip home to Longford. So how did you introduce Mary to your family as the kooky California girl?
I call it the farm wife interview.
Okay.
Was my first trip back out there to the
Is
farm.
that the one in May?
Yeah.
Yep.
So we got to
So
go
how'd that
all the
go
way.
for you, Hayden?
We got to go all the way back to the beginning of our story. So we met third day of college ever as
Oh,
freshmen.
geez.
We sat next to each other in a class. I was like,
What
man,
class
he's really
was
good
it,
looking.
Hayden?
It was AggieCon 120.
Wow, you get bonus points for remembering that.
Yeah. Yep.
AggieCon
Sat on the
120, third
sat on
day
the
of freshman year, you meet each other.
Yep.
Mhm.
Would you drop your books and say, oh, will you help me pick them up?
Oh, heavens.
On the second day of that class, they had assigned seats. And he's like, all right, sit where you want to sit because we're going to do like attendance and stuff. And it was based on what row and what seat. And I said, well, I might as well just sit next to you instead of a chair apart. So we sat next to each other the whole semester, and we had to. That was where our attendance points were taken. So
Yeah.
Mhm.
just worked out pretty good for me.
It did work out pretty good for you.
Yeah.
So if you follow the timeline, we didn't start dating until our senior year. So we had plenty of time to watch each other, see what they were doing, seeing how the kind of person they were becoming. So
Yeah. Judging how much time you spend at the Kites or wherever in Aggieville. Or what's the one across the road, the Irish bar?
O'Malley's.
O'Malley's.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
So you took you 4
So that-
years to get up the gumption to ask her out, or for you to say yes?
Yes. Both. So, but yeah. So anyway, I was watching Snapchat stories of what was going on his farm, and so it was. And I always asked him questions about, oh, how's Grandpa Fred getting along? How's your mom and dad doing? Always in the back of my mind. There's a strategy behind that one. And then
You
eventually,
bring up something that is unique to our time right now. And I think back to when I was dating in college and my first wife, who lives out in McCook, and Kim, my wife now, we didn't know that stuff unless we sat down and talked to them, and we'd sit around across from the table or in a date going, hey, so tell me about stuff. And Hayden would have talked about Grandpa Fred and this, and you would have gotten bits and pieces. But you just brought up a point that you knew so much more about Hayden and his family because of Snapchat and other social media. Oh, that changes the interaction that you have when you finally meet his parents as your farm wife interview. Would you agree with that?
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Yeah. It was easy to have. Okay, so I know you're interested with his mom. I know you like horses. You can talk to me about that. And granted, we had talked about this before, but his dad works for Wilbur Ellis, and that's where we get our chemical with almonds. And so getting to talk to him about that. And from my journalism portion of my degree, you're used to doing some of your research beforehand and getting your sources down pat. So it made my job easy. And also I just really like to talk, so that's not really an issue. But I like to know what to talk about.
But it puts you in a different position that we have information at our fingertips. And I think about the half hour before we got on together, I was on Google looking for bits and pieces on both of you.
Mm-hmm.
25, 30 years ago, we didn't have that. So we actually, at that time, had to actually talk to people to learn about them.
Yeah. Yeah. It's creepy. It's great, but it's also creepy at the same time.
Oh, yeah. It's like me knowing that he had a tackle against Wamigo in 2013. Isn't that crazy?
I know. That's something I didn't know about.
Yeah. Man. Whew, you're going to get on it like Hayden Mary.
You think you know a guy, am I right?
You think. You've been married for 6 months now. You think you'd know this stuff.
Yeah. Had a decade of friendship and being boyfriend and girlfriend, and you just still learn something.
I've always been good at posting things on my Snapchat story for others to see and kind of broadcasting how great my life is and how exciting it is when things break and how bad they could break. And so I've just always I used to do it every day on the weekends, especially when I'd come back to farm. It'd be multiple times a day. I'd have a new update of whatever I was doing because I thought it was the coolest thing ever. That was my job in college, was going and working on the family farm and taking care of my own cattle. And I didn't have a job at the greenhouse, and I didn't bartend, and I didn't Uber or anything like that. I farmed.
So when I got the chance to come out to the farm myself, when we were in college, it was kind of nice to be able to put things together and, okay, I've seen this before, or, oh, I've heard about this. Mm-hmm. And it painted a nice picture.
But when you heard about it, it was more like you've seen a story about that.
Yeah, pretty much.
Interesting. Huh. Mm-hmm. So how do you think that new access to media and sharing has affected your entrepreneurship for both of you?
Mm-hmm. Definitely positive. It's easy to be able to search photographer North Central Kansas, or you see your friends' wedding pictures and you go, oh, I like that style. I want that too. Or I've seen your kids' pictures and I want that style too. And it's helped out a lot, especially as we just become a more visual society with increased videos. You can't write anything and people won't read it, but you make it into a TikTok dance and people will watch it. And so this online media has been awesome from a photography standpoint. From a beef production standpoint, Hayden can talk about that.
Yeah, the media has always been important to me, and I thought about it a long time ago. About the time I bought my first iPhone, I said, bought for myself, this is one of the most important tools I can buy, and I'm going to keep it nice and updated and like not as good a camera as Mary's, but like it needs to have a good camera and I need it to work and I need to have service because I'm constantly messaging customers during certain times of year and like giving hats to my customers or selling hats to my friends, and then they wear that hat and then they post that picture on Facebook or on Twitter, and that's, their date night and they got my hat on, and now it's not only just me and them seeing it and everybody they're at the concert with, but they're also posting that, and then all their family sees it, and the media just is like a leaf blower on a brush pile. It just really takes things off.
So you have the beef that you're selling direct to consumer.
Yeah.
And are you still making candles?
Yes, I am. I also make candles in my free time, and I have a website for selling the candles, and Mary has that where you just type in rough cut candles in Google and it will bring you my website before anything else. And it's just there.
So you've optimized the search engine.
Yeah, she has.
That is so cool. I'll have links in the description of all your websites. So that's really neat to see.
Yeah.
I've mailed candles all over the country.
Yeah, and it's really neat watching you make the candles and your Snapchat stories that you share.
Snapchat. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
A lot of late nights, early mornings making candles.
We have the best smelling upstairs in America.
Mm-hmm.
Sweet. And the thing that I think that was really neat about your candle business is the way that people will send in a bottle and they'll make a candle out of it. And there's a story behind that bottle. Mm-hmm. We don't know the story, but the people that had you make that candle were like, oh my gosh, I remember when I went through this fifth of LaCroix and I had a candle made out of it and I always refill it. That was a bad night, but I got a candle. I mean, the stories behind it have to be neat. And do you get to share those with your customers?
Yeah, I do. What's even kind of the special bottles in the story is like, sorry, a lot of ums. One time, one of my customers brought me a bottle of Jack Daniels that had been in his dad's house for over a year. They didn't drink it that often, but they drank it together. And before it ran empty, he died. The dad did. And they finished it together with the rest of the family. And then he brought me that bottle of Jack Daniels and I made that into a candle and, just really, really special, some special memories for people. And then there's been others that have brought me a bottle of rum that they got on a cruise and I made that into a candle. And that's like a perfect keepsake because, the rum's gone, but now they can have the candle to remember it with.
Well, and I like the story that you had about the Jack Daniels bottle because that turns a piece of trash that you would go through that person's house and throw away like, oh, we don't need this bottle, into a keepsake and a memory maker.
Yeah.
And as we're trying to minimize the stuff that we have in our houses, if you could turn a piece of trash into a memory that you could share, that's really neat.
Yeah.
And that's reduce, reuse, and recycle.
Yeah. It's really good recycling. I have lots and lots of boxes to recycle materials.
Yeah. It was better when we knew guys in the AGR house where they all graduated because we never.
I got another 4 for you from the weekend.
We'd come home from Manhattan after I graduated. We'd come home from Manhattan with like a half a pickup bed full of liquor bottles, and
we were just jangling down the road.
I believe it because when I was in school, we would have those on our shelf. We would save them, and somebody would sign it like the epic night, and it'd have that 5th of rum or that 5th of Jack, and we didn't drink a lot in high school, but
that's how I got started with the candles. Is we'd have liquor bottles decorating our room in the fraternity, empty ones, and I didn't think my mom would care for that, and I was like, well, if I could put a plant in one of those, that'd be okay. And I learned how to cut them in two, and it's even more funny. I got tired of buying candles to make our house smell better. I was like, man, I'll just make one. I'm gonna make my own candle. And then those two hobbies met in the middle, and I figured out how to sand it down so that the glass was not gonna cut you. And I started making candles.
That is neat.
Yeah, I had so much fun making them. I knew pretty quickly that I enjoyed doing it. I knew pretty quickly that once I got to about 12 candles, then it'd be kind of weird, and I needed to start selling these. And
Hayden, the crazy candle guy.
Yeah, I'd be the candle guy. And
I know what you're getting for Christmas from Hayden.
Yeah. Yep. Everybody got candles for a couple of years.
There you go. You get a candle and a package of hamburger. Woo.
Yep.
Pretty much.
So you all have your own businesses. You got the beef, and you got the candles, and you've got your photography and videography. Has that entrepreneurial opportunity helped you transition to the farm better? Has it given you some diversity that other people don't have?
I love the farm from a photography standpoint because it's an awesome backdrop for everything. And whenever people are looking for that country feel, they can just come on over to my house, and it's the best commute because I just walk out my door and I'm right there ready to go for them. And we have water and pop and beer if you want. And so it makes it kind of nice. Is it feels more of an experience rather than just getting our photos done. And so I like it from a photography standpoint for that, just as a service for my clients.
Mm-hmm. But has that extra income helped you make the transition to being comfortable being a young farmer that bought your first farm and trying to expand as a family with you and Mary?
My beef sales on our farm, our beef sales have now exceeded what we sell the calves that I don't sell for beef. And as far as like a gross domestic product standpoint of our farm, the beef sales have grown to be very significant, and it's really important to me. And it's easy to take it for granted right now with cattle prices being high. But a few years ago, when cattle prices were not in a very favorable spot for me, it's when I can set my own price for the beef. This will be really good for me in 4 years when the cattle market is back down lower, and that makes it pretty predictable. Like when it comes to making farm payments, and even the candles help. I've paid for Christmases with candle money, and I got a little bit more money for an engagement ring with candle money. Mm-hmm. And when I graduated college, I moved to a house that did not have a refrigerator, and I bought a brand new, real fancy refrigerator just with cash from that account. And that's how I bought my beer my last semester of college. And the side gig seemed like that. Yeah. All from candles.
Wow.
And my doing photography and website building helps Hayden out because he doesn't have to either learn that skill himself and take time away from the farm to do that. He can just put me on it and it works.
Yeah. So, I'm sure those services are much more expensive than if you had to really pay for it. Yeah. I know from experience with the vet bill that I have. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Oh, you're lucky. You have a vet in house. Yeah, I paid for it with a $65,000 landscaping job in the backyard. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Exactly.
We just built a website for selling our beef, and it looks very good. It's very professional. We had quite a bit of help building it, but all of the details are right, and all of these photos are very professional because Mary had taken these photos, and like I had this material and she knew what fonts to use and what colors to use and what to mix and match. And it doesn't look like a rancher just slapped it together with really great photos that came from an iPhone. And it's better because Mary had these professional tools and she knew how to write the paragraphs and got me pointed in the right direction. And her skills have made a big difference in that, and we're just getting started with the beef website.
That is really cool. Hayden, we're going to have to schedule a one-on-one podcast talking about direct-to-consumer beef for two reasons. Because I did my own podcast talking about our struggles trying to do direct-to-consumer lamb and the struggles that we had locally. And then part of the conversation I had with AJ Fridges, a friend of mine from Northeast Iowa, was talking about the challenges of direct consumer and more so the illusion of everybody should do it. It's so much more money. As you brought up, you get to sell for more. It's a more consistent price, all the positives. But a lot of people don't talk about the challenges, the negative things about it that you've already been through. So we need to schedule that because you as a success story is something that we need to talk about because it's going to be counter to me being really negative about it.
I'd be happy to talk all about it. I have a lot of stories. Mary and I have changed everything we've done on the farm since I started dating Mary. The whole thing. I often call it a boat, and we're rocking the boat. And first it was going sideways, and we're over now. The boat's upside down. If we can put it right back up, that's cool. But nothing's the same anymore. We turned that boat over, and it's not been all success stories. We have had a lot of shin bangs on the way, and we're getting her turned around now. In a few years, it's going to be. But it's selling direct to consumer has been great, but amidst changing everything and doing the direct consumer, we've got some stories. And it's
so
hard
as we're
work.
talking about Mary's, yeah. So as we're talking about Mary's skills, do you think that the advertising on social media that you did and the montage of pictures that she put together for was it 5 heifers you sold at Clay Center?
Yep.
8 heifers?
Yep. We
Do you
sold
think
them.
that helped?
We sold them privately. Yep.
Oh, privately. Okay. But do you think that her skills and her putting together that social media campaign got you more money for those heifers? Or was it the tagline "friendly and fertile"?
It really was. I think it was Mary's skill in putting that flyer together. That, that's just one photo, and some guy strolling can run it by his dad and just go, look, here's the picture, here's what they are, here's where they're located, here's the price, and it's all in one spot. It's not, well, let me find the sale barn report and what day was they selling and where are they at, and no, just come look at them. And I could watch a sale barn report, and I saw how much they were selling for that day, and I was like, all right, well, this is how much I think I would like to get for them, and that's the price we're going to get. And if I don't get it, well, then we can take them to the sale barn. And it at least I knew I was going to get that minimum selling them privately. And I probably, in some cases, you don't know, I could have got more money for them at the sale barn, but I feel like my bred heifers were not the traditional bred heifers, and they were a little bit different, and they really need to go to somebody that can appreciate what we're doing differently with them. And Mary's skills and our connections definitely, it worked. We sold them all that way.
Well, I know I shared it. I shared it to friends in Nebraska. I shared it with Shelby, and I shared it with a friend or two in Iowa. So I know I don't think the people I shared it with bought them, but your network boomed.
Yeah.
It's a lot different than going to the sale barn.
Yeah.
And it's just getting started, and next year we'll have more. And, the guy that bought them last year might be interested, or he might know somebody, or he'll have a good thing to say. And we really hope to grow that. It's like the opposite of a direct consumer. It's direct to other ranchers. And now I got ranchers we sell to, and we've got people that like grilled steaks to sell to, and I can set the price for those too, good or bad. And
so one of the things that we struggle with in agriculture is the cyclicity of markets. And we just talked about it. We're at an all-time crazy high price for beef. I mean, the prices are in the stratosphere. They're on the verge of going into the outer space. That's how high the cattle prices are. But it wasn't that long ago we were all struggling to be profitable because the price was low. When you look at the pig market, they struggled with profitability for the last 24, 36 months. So we talk about diversification, and push it. Got to diversify. And I think that as we talk, you and Mary have diversified with having your entrepreneur, the candles, the wedding photography, the videography, and your direct to consumer, but you're also diversifying your diversification with the way that you're selling your beef cattle.
Yeah, accurate.
Yeah.
So you're making yourself immune to whims of the market to a certain degree with what you've done.
That's definitely the goal. I mean, we want to stay on top of anything that could happen, and we want to plan so that we never fail. And that's easier said than done, but we're trying. We're trying.
Well, you're doing it in your photography and videography. It would be one thing to concentrate completely on weddings.
Right.
And that has its own cyclicity. And you're probably not doing many weddings in January.
Yeah.
Traditionally. But if you
Right.
do other photo shoots or videography or a website design or whatever, that adds a little consistency to it, diversifying what you're doing.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. And this is actually really applicable because I was trying to do more videography. I was worried the photography scene was getting really saturated and I needed to explore different skill sets to stay on top of things. And that's when I really was trying to push video a little bit more. Unfortunately, what's the first thing in the budget to go? It's the video aspect. But that's just the same line of thinking, is just trying to diversify, find a different niche for things. And I never thought I would be cool with doing infant shoots. 10-year-old kids, that's my speed. I like them when they can blow their own noses. They have a personality, but they're not in the middle school age. But I've started doing more infant shoots just to keep up with things. And actually, I've really enjoyed it. It's just a really special stage of life. And as I'm getting, building a family and eventually down the road, well, obviously getting married, but then eventually down the road, it's a little more manageable. And so that's just something that I'm trying to do on my business and personally, just trying to diversify, keep things new, keep things fresh. And I am not an early adapter. And that's holds me back quite a bit.
I don't think I would agree with that.
Oh, Hayden's an early adapter, and he's gotten me out on my shell. But man, it was a rough one before Hayden. BH was the dark ages,
and that was 2020.
BH would have been
2019.
2019. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Mary
I really like what we're
all the time.
Yeah.
What's that?
Right.
I said Mary and I started dating and it just started raining all the time.
That's awesome. Well, I really like what we're talking about as a young farmer, and I use that collectively for the two of you, finding a way to be on the farm and finding income streams that are not subject strictly to the whims of Chicago Board of Trade or Chicago Mercantile Exchange. With the entrepreneur gene that you both have and the business that you have outside of traditional ag, how much has that advanced where you think you would have been? So do you think that you're 5 years ahead of where you would have been if you would have just been a straight corn, soy, wheat, cow farmer? 10 years? Or have you not even thought about it that way?
Admittedly, I've never thought about it that way.
It's a lot. We're much further ahead the way I'm doing it now. Like when I graduated college, I would say I was a few years head start because of the things that I have been doing, purchasing my own cattle when I was young. And, even when I graduated high school, I felt like I was ahead, and I could see that from like FFA record keeping and things like that. But now, if I was traditional, conventional corn and soybeans, wheat, Milo, do everything typically. We've owned this farm for 2 years, and over 2 years. And it's scary to think about. I often think about, what if I'd have done this and that's what everyone else does? And what if I'd have done that and that's what everyone else does? And it would be really bad. It's really scary to think about. We've made some decisions in the past couple of years that have already saved our young farm to go on another year, and it's largely in the financial decisions.
But sometimes it deals with some of your agronomic decisions.
Yeah.
You're trying to do some more of that regenerative agriculture and being less reliant on chemical inputs, trying to work with nature to satisfy whatever we need for soil health and crop needs. And it's only going to get better the more you learn.
Yep.
And you're constantly listening to podcasts about it. You're reading books about it. And we're just trying to figure out how to farm that works with nature. There's a lot of times that things that make ecological sense also make economic sense. And that's kind of what Hayden's trying to do.
And then back to
Careful,
Go ahead.
be careful, you kooky Californians coming out in you.
Yeah.
He married the right gal.
It's funny. I'm probably the weirder one of the two when it comes to that kind of stuff.
Well, I have been in Aggieville with you drinking beer, and we both have our own weird streak. Yeah, I understand.
Yeah.
The spice of life.
The spice of life.
Talking about the Board of Trade thing, the experiences that I remember the best are when I lose money, and I lost money on our first wheat crop, and I lost money on our first corn crop. And I remember the week we were going to sell calves one year. This was a while ago. And the futures was going in between $1.37 and $1.45 or something like that. And I needed like $1.42 to break even. And I was watching it bounce back and forth. And I was like, boy, I sure hope I make money on these calves this year. And I'm like, so I just, like, we've had enough experiences losing money on commodities. And if there's something I can do, like grazing a cover crop instead of planting double crop soybeans, I am like, that is, I'm going to try it. And that's what we're working on now.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's interesting you bring that up because I'm right in the middle of that. Because our bean crop sucked.
Yeah.
Because we didn't get rain. And we even had a cover crop. But we got some cover crop payment from NRCS. So we're trying to look at diversification. And I claim, and there's people that will disagree with me, but I'll take it to my grave, that I'm diversified because I have an in-town job and my wife has an in-town job. And that adds to the diversification of our farm because it's another income stream.
Mm-hmm.
I totally agree. Yeah.
So it does my heart good watching you do things a little different so that you can, number one, be on the farm.
Yeah.
And number two, accelerate your path on where you can go with the farm.
Yeah. It gives me something to fall back on too. Both of us have jobs. Mine is not in town. It's for my family on the farm, and Mary's is in town. And if everything goes bad on our farm, we'll still make it through another year because we both get up and go work for other people every day, and we work really hard at it. And you're right. That is another way to diversify a farm.
And unfortunately, the opinion that I have and you have is not accepted in general production agriculture. In fact, it's looked down upon. It's like, oh, you can't farm full time. Why don't you stop farming and let the real farmers do it, and you just work your in-town job? And I've heard that so many times over the last 17 years. Let the real farmers do it. And I think it's bullshit.
Yeah.
Because a lot of those people that are saying that what you and Mary and I and Kim are doing are the same people that have trucking companies. They have tiling companies. They fly drones to apply chemicals for people. And when I throw up, you're diversified. You got an all-farm job. You're like, oh, no, that's not diversification. That's a farm. I'm like, I raise the bullshit flag. My bullshit flag is blaze orange. It's made out of a coat that I used when I hunted pheasants in Kansas. And it flies too freaking much. So I applaud what you're doing to diversify both on the farm and off the farm so that you can stay on the farm.
Mm-hmm. And it's nice that our off the farm jobs complement our on the farm lifestyle.
Yeah.
So that makes it really nice. And it's just another opportunity for us to learn and find nuggets that work, find nuggets that don't work, and try to help us out. Right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we bought a farm with a house on it. Now we're living on the farm. Like, this is our farm payment is part of our home. Like, so it's even more good. It's more
good. I like that. More better.
I don't
More
have
better,
a
much more better.
I don't have a rent payment. I don't have a mortgage payment. It's a
Mhm.
farm payment, and our farm is just so happened to be our house, and it's
Yeah.
it's
So I got a suggestion for you as a husband with a few more years of experience than you. Take some of that candle payment and get rid of that paneling that is behind you, because
It's
that
growing on
is dated. I mean, that's
textured.
dated. I could tell that your house isn't new.
No.
yeah. It
And-
was built in the early 1900s, like before 1910.
Well, which part was built? Because there's a
Yeah.
lot of
It's
add-ons.
been added on a lot.
And I'm sure there's not much that's level or square.
No, I'm learning that some things aren't level anymore, and
Our sliding door likes to remind us, especially when it's negative 11 degrees and
Yeah.
it doesn't seal quite right anymore. And so you get this nice stiff wind coming in your living room.
Yeah, you've got a lot of worthy places to put some candle money.
Yeah.
I have to add, what you can't see is in the master bedroom there is a walk-in closet that was built before I got married. We're married to put all of our clothes in, so we're making some improvements, and there's a lot of rooms that have got painted, but this just so
A lot
happens
of
to be
paint.
an original room.
A
That
lot
is
more
cool.
paint, a lot less wallpaper.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. And I have to keep my mouth shut because Kim's putting wallpaper up on in 2 rooms. And I think back to our first house we bought, and we took down so much wallpaper, and it was good wallpaper, and so it didn't come off.
Yes.
Yeah.
The problem with this house was that their one layer would be super cute wallpaper. I'm like, man, why didn't they just leave it at this? And then the next layer was like split pea green, and it matched the shag carpet that they had in the room. And so you just had to wonder what their line of thinking was when they decorated this house sometimes.
Well, that's crazy. Now, as
It's a time
we're
capsule.
talking about your path in ag and how your farm's different and it's diversified, can you think back to the Carl class you're in, Mary? That was 3 years ago. In those 3 years, have you seen differences, or could you go back? What would be the reaction in 2022 when you first introduced yourself, if you would introduce yourself in 2025 with what we just talked about?
Oh my gosh. Carl changed my life entirely. And so I just don't even want to know. Like 2022 Mary, pre-Carl Mary, just I feel bad for her because she had a little fewer places to apply what she learned. And so if I were to go back and reintroduce myself, it would be, I would have better questions for those speakers. I would have better frame of reference for what we were talking about when it came to certain issues in ag. But I'm also glad that I did it so young and with so few of experiences, because now I have a lot longer life to be able to think differently about like education funding and healthcare in rural communities. And so, although I wish I had more places to apply what I had learned, it was also really nice to have that blank slate to just, and really form my own opinions about things. And really, it wasn't what my mom and dad taught me. It wasn't what my job had taught me. It wasn't anything like that. It was whatever I thought about, and whatever my opinion came from these experiences. And so I don't know if that's totally answers your question, but I feel like that really reflects how.
So the Carl so you being a part of Carl class just expanded on the liberal arts education that you had. And I mean liberal arts in a classical
right.
lowercase l of liberal, as in you're getting exposed to a lot.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And that's a good side, bad side about ag communications was I did get exposed to a lot. It was a lot of ag topics. So, you took a little bit of animal science classes. I had a minor in agronomy, so took more agronomy classes than the average bear. And then you got to go take some mass communications classes, and that would be liberal with a capital L kind of classes. And so it wasn't like Carl was my first experience dealing with that.
Okay.
It would have been college. And even before that, obviously growing up in California, my favorite interview question when I was getting into Carl was, okay, you might be dealing with people who think differently than you do. How do you feel? And I just hit him with, well, I grew up in California and now I live in Kansas. So I'll just let that answer. It's okay.
Yeah.
I'm not afraid to talk to people who think differently. I'm not afraid to, you know, sometimes it's interesting. Sometimes it's interesting talking to a vegetarian. I don't know how you got there. I know what it's like to not eat meat on Friday, and for during Lent, and I think that's kind of lame. But so how do you make your life choices on that? So I'm not afraid to talk to somebody who thinks differently. And as we're kind of to go back to some of the regenerative ag things that Hayden's trying to do, it's like it takes a little bit of out box thinking. So it's good to see what other people are doing, good, bad, otherwise. And you just never know what you're going to pick up from somebody, and just to have an appreciation for how people come about issues is something that people don't talk enough about. So that was a long-winded way of saying, just talk to a whole lot of people, and you'll never go wrong.
Do you think your experience with your teaching at Kansas State in AgCom, your exposure to liberal with an L, liberal arts with the mainline classes you had to take, and your Carl helps you put you in a position where you're not afraid to talk about things that we're afraid to talk about as an industry, but we should talk about?
It's still hard. It's still hard to have those kind of, well, what if we thought about it this way? And what if we kind of didn't do it like that? It still takes some guts to do something against the grain. And I wish I could say that that's helped me. Those experiences helped me be not afraid to be like, this is what we ought to be doing, or this is what I think. And that might just come with age. I just still might be kind of in that youngest person in the room mentality. And it's like, you're not supposed to talk. You're supposed to be the one that's listening and hearing what other folks are doing. And you'll have a time and place to have a voice, but I don't know. I feel like I was way more I say I was way more outspoken. I still like to talk, but I have to remind myself, you know what, it's okay. Just listen to this one. And I don't have I don't feel like I have a good balance on like, yeah, this is the time to do it. This time to
I think that's something that'll be something that comes with maturity. There's battles that are worth fighting and some that aren't. So that'll come. So Hayden, we are in an industry where we're really good at saying you have to think outside the box, and you can't do what we did last year. And if you do what Grandpa did, then you're never going to survive. But then our leaders do the same old. And thinking about Commodity Classic, we're reusing a bunch of stuff. How does it feel for you to be truly not doing what your grandfather did and following those suggestions of think outside the box, make your own path?
It's really difficult, and when it works, it's rewarding. It's really hard to do things different than my dad and my grandfather and even my neighbors have done, because those are the people that I look up to the most, and hearing them say that won't work, or I don't know why you're doing it that way, or when I do have a problem and then they get involved to help me fix it, it's like, oh man, now I gotta ask for help when things aren't going the way I want after I'm doing it differently than they would have. And so it's really embarrassing, but it's, I have been in the past couple of years very diligent about my cattle and my crop record keepings and how much things cost and how much I'm getting paid for things. And it's the spreadsheet doesn't lie. If you're doing it in a way that loses money, I got to change that, because I can't come home to my wife and explain to her how we lost money on another crop, or these cows are not, whatever it is. And it's hard to do things differently than everyone else, but sometimes you need to.
Yeah. I need you to come spend a couple hours with me. Too bad you're 14 hours away.
Yeah. We travel well.
Yeah. We like to see new things.
Yeah.
There you go. How has the internet helped you specifically, Hayden, in being comfortable doing things different than your dad and your neighbors?
It's been everything. I got suspended from X, from Twitter, unrelated, and so I haven't been able to get on there recently. But I would get on there and just tweet about, oh man, look what's happening here. This is how it's going, and people would reply, and I'd post something funny, or I'm like, OMG, look at this, and everybody'd be like, oh man, and it'd be like my diary of people that I could go talk to. And on a positive note, the listening to other podcasts have been very good for me. It's almost like going to church in an agriculture sense. I can go listen to what someone else is doing and how it's working, and I'm like, okay, like it's working for them. I can do it too. Like, think about it and follow these principles, and I wouldn't have gotten that from just talking to people on the phone, because some of these people I didn't know. And I would argue that the internet has led me to a lot of connections at college. And lost my train of thought.
That's all right.
It's okay. I did right before I asked that question.
Internet.
Hey,
We
Mary
have all
needs
kinds
to.
now as you've gotten into TikTok. That's also opened
Yeah.
up a whole can of worms when it comes to connecting with people, seeing what other folks are doing. It makes one time you sent me a video of Canadians and how they deal with waterers up there during the wintertime. And so I feel like that's just opened a whole nother here's how other people are doing it. What can I do on my farm based on what they're doing?
And the internet gives me ideas and experiences and like live recordings like this, and they're recorded for later, but it's all experiences that you couldn't have gotten from a book, because a book takes a year to publish, and then it takes me years and years to find out about the book, and maybe I'd find about it on the internet or on YouTube. And like watching YouTube and listening to podcasts, these people are doing this like last week, like right away, and then you're going to hear about it when that gets uploaded to the podcast that you subscribe to, and you can listen to it. And that's been so huge. It's been very big for me.
Well, you bringing up learning things. The heater core on our 1998 Ford Expedition is leaking.
Yeah.
I was watching a video on YouTube before logging in here of a man that was taking apart the dash and the console so that he could put a new heater core in. 25 minutes on YouTube, working on a car that was bought brand new in 1998. That's 337,000 miles on it.
Wow.
That is a specific item that you would not find anywhere. There's not a book written on it, but it's there on the internet. And I think about some of the similarities that we have on our farms. We're 100% no-tillers. We love using poultry litter when we can get it, and I use cover crops. I've been using, my first cover crop was planted in 2012. So I'm using cover crops more than a lot of people in our area. And I've got friends that I farm with that tried it once. They don't do it. They disc grip everything that they can. Everything that goes to corn gets worked in the spring. Very traditional, minimum tillage kind of farmers. We get along. They have different yields. They farm different stuff. So I can't rely on them for suggestions because they farm different than me. Outside of setting up a combine or borrowing a tractor or a truck, I can't go, hey, Dave, I had this challenge with cereal rye and this. What do I do? Because they don't use them. And I'm sure that's the same experience you have because your neighbors, your dad and your grandpa don't do it the same way.
Yep. I have some connections of people that I can call on regularly, and it's like a neighbor, but they don't live close by, but they're doing similar things to stuff I'm doing, and I can call them, and it's like a consultant. And I rely heavily on other people.
And you've got that for farming and for some of your butcher beef.
Yeah.
Has those kind of friend advisors.
There you go. I do a lot of genealogy, and I've traced my family back multiple centuries. I've got 6,500 people in my family tree, and it's not complete, but that gives me a chance to think. I used to drink a lot of bourbon and sit around at night and go to bed like at 3:00 after I was on Ancestry.com for a long time. But one of the thoughts that I have continually relates to my grandparents, where they didn't leave the township that they lived in. And going to Fort Wayne or going to Auburn was a big deal. So that'd be like going from Wamego to Manhattan.
Mm-hmm.
And now we have the internet that we can still stay inside the township, but it gets us so far. And I think about my small little podcast. It's been listened to in 14 different countries.
Wow. Yeah. Aren't those analytics just crazy?
They're crazy.
You never know where that's
We've expanded our network. We've expanded on our expanded education. And it also almost makes going to university anymore like going to high school. Like it's just a necessary step and we have to do it. But I'm really going to get my education by looking for people that can help me. Like if I'm going to do wheat, I'm going to go talk to Phil Needham in Kentucky because he's the wheat god. Mm-hmm. I'm not going to go to the extension specialist at Purdue or Kansas State because Phil Needham's the wheat god. I mean, that's just an example. If I'm going to talk about cover crops, I might listen to Jason Mock from Indiana because he's a weirdo and crazy and has crazy ideas. But I might listen to Lauren Steinlage from Iowa because his experience is international. He does it on the farm. And do we do 60-inch in corn and just try and play? You're right. There are so many opportunities for us to learn, and it expands our network. And I think about the last episodes I've had on my podcast. Every single one of them came from Twitter. You, Mike Pearson, Andy Vance, Dave Walton, Ted Hamer. I met them all on Twitter. Yeah. That's the internet. I never would have met them going to a Farm Bureau meeting or going to the county fair.
Yeah. I just came back from Commodity Classic, and it was amazing how many people from Twitter were there. And it's how many of those guys would walk by and you wouldn't know who they were. And now you know a lot about them. And just like us dating too, is how much you know about these people and how much you can just cut the small talk and go right into the hard stuff because you know what they're dealing with, know what their operation contains, and cut the crap and just get to the good stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the beauty of social media. I like to joke that it's a cesspool, but it has its benefits.
Well, life is a cesspool.
Life is a cesspool.
Yeah, so we have covered a lot. And we're going to have to talk more. I think, Hayden, you and I need to get together and do a direct-to-consumer as a primer for people to do it right, to book in my don't do it this way. Mary, I think we need to get together. I've got one or two other people that are really good at photography and social media. I think you can put together. I would love to have you spend time on a podcast with a young friend of mine named Malachi Malcolm. He's 17 years old. He started taking pictures for giggles, and now he's doing live athletic events. He's contracted with one of the local universities to do their basketball games.
Oh, that's awesome.
And we had him. He did family pictures for us a couple years ago. I did it. It was like, hey, he ain't doing that anymore because he's past that. I mean, he's doing really cool stuff. In fact, I've been communicating with him on how to upgrade this behind me.
Yeah.
And what cameras we might buy. He's 17 years old. When I was 17 years old, I didn't know shit.
Yeah.
That's incredible.
It is incredible. And I look at you guys at 20 something. Man, you're in a position that I was at 40. This is neat. I'm having fun talking to you guys. But
and there are days we feel like we're behind the 8 ball. I don't know about you. I do
Yeah.
all the time. I feel like I should be.
Wow.
I should be
I think
more
you've
ahead.
I think you've lapped the competition a lap or
Oh.
two. So we come to the end, and every podcast I have, we answer the same 5 questions. So we can do this one of 2 ways. You can each answer it, or you can play the trivia game from the bar and you do a collective answer. Or we can just do whatever we want. So
We'll wing it.
Yeah.
we'll wing it. I love it. That's how. And the funny part about these questions, I have not changed them since the very first guest I had. And even the people that have listened to the questions still have a hard time answering because I think they're good questions. So here we go. I got to get to the right page. What is one lesson from agriculture that you carry with you every day?
You got to be prepared. You got to keep your powder dry. You never know. You never know what's going to happen, and you got to be ready to go every day tomorrow. Even if you worked late tonight, like something's probably going to happen tomorrow, and you better be ready. You better have your water jug full, and you better have your lunch packed. And you better have your boots dried because just never know what's going to happen next.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Learn how to change a tire because you'll run over a lot of things.
There you go. That's great. Well, that plays into be prepared. And being
Right.
part of prepared is having some skills. That's
Yeah.
neat. If you could have coffee with any historical figure from ag, who would it be?
Gosh. I think Norman Borlaug would be cool. And I'm sure that's such a basic answer, and especially like go Cats, right? Well, I mean, I know he wasn't a K-Stater, but Wheat World. I think he'd just be interesting, but I also feel like he would go way over my head just out of the chute. And then I'd just be sitting there drinking my coffee going, there's a lot of things I gotta Google after this.
Mm-hmm.
But
yeah,
I think it would be an interesting one to
Okay.
talk to. Just from world travels and science.
Let me think about it a second.
I loved you saying Norman Borlaug because I think you're the 5th person to say that.
Oh, really? I'm
Yeah.
so basic.
No,
who would you
I don't know. I don't think it's basic at all. Because he has had so much impact on our industry that we've taken what he did for us for granted.
Yes.
And
yes.
saying that he saved 1 million people, it's almost cliche now. Okay, he saved 1 million people. But the legacy of what he did laid the foundation for us having too much corn and too much soybeans in 2025.
Yeah.
And I would contend, Mary, that he would get more out of talking to you in 2025 than you would get from talking to him. Because your experiences after he did what he did have to be intriguing as heck.
Yeah. And just the technology that we use day to day as normal, ordinary humans would be so crazy to someone from back then. But
I would say my great grandfather and Greg Judy are the 2 people I'd like to have a cup of coffee with from agriculture.
Who was the second one?
Greg Judy.
Okay.
He is a rancher in Missouri. He has a very well-known YouTube channel that I watch regularly.
Cool. And your great-grandfather, why would you want to talk to him?
I knew him from the sense when I was a little kid. I rode with him in the combine. But it was kind of to the point where it was like he wasn't in the best of health, and I was really little. And Mom would tell me, I'd sit on his toolbox, and Mom would tell me, if he falls asleep, push this pedal. And she'd point to the clutch, and I'd have nightmares of not being able to get the combine to stop before it runs into my parents' house. Like, it terrorized me. This is back when combines had clutches.
That's a good one. And you know, Hayden, I had this conversation with a couple people about talking to our grandparents and how we didn't take advantage of talking to them. And it is an unfair pressure to put on us that we didn't take advantage of the opportunity because we didn't give a shit.
Yeah.
I mean, my grandfather died when I was 11, and we had fun together. But I wasn't going to ask him about, well, Grandpa, how do you think the impact of the Depression ended up helping you save money in 1950 and 1960? An 11-year-old isn't going to ask that question. Me at 54, I would take that and spend 20 minutes talking about this and how did they go there. And you just worrying about hitting the clutch. You didn't give a shit what the old man was doing. Stay awake so I don't die.
Yeah.
But now in your mid-20s, you're like, man, if I just had the opportunity.
Mm-hmm.
I'm blessed with the opportunity to have these experiences with my grandfather, and
Yes,
on the days he's spitting out wisdom, it's like I am so glad I am standing right here because he doesn't just think to tell these stories, and he'll tell me about something that happened 40, 50 years ago. I'm like, you did what? Like, you used to do that? And he's like, I haven't told you yet. And I was like, no.
no.
Tell
So
me.
you have iPhones, right?
Yeah, I do.
Is there a quick record that you can use on there, Mary?
Yeah.
Do you have that as an icon?
No, I should though.
All right.
This past
You
summer,
set him
after-
up on his phone so he can do that. Or get a handy recorder where you can just hit the button and boom. When that comes up, Hayden, that's my friendly suggestion to you.
We want to do those legacy interviews with our grandparents because I still have 3 out of my 4 are alive, and Hayden's got 2 left. And I did one for his grandma right before she passed. Yeah, so we want to.
Okay, I
do it, and it's like, why haven't we? But
so I subscribe to Vance Crowe. I listen to his podcast every week. I thought when you first doing legacy interviews, that you can do that. You got to have somebody that's not related to do the questions.
True.
Yeah.
That's a good point.
Because then they'll be honest. More honest. Or closer to honest.
Yeah.
Or closer to the truth.
Yeah.
Yeah. And they'll be able to ask questions, follow-up questions that you wouldn't think of because you remember your grandfather and then you assume things. So I'd help you with it if you wanted. So
yeah.
I'd make the trip to Kansas and sit your grandfather down and say, hey, Grandpa Fred, I'm here to talk.
Have a conversation.
That's right.
And my great-grandfather did things quite differently in his life from his dad. And I just would love to sit down and talk with him. What was that like? He went to different schooling. He lived in a different place. He farmed differently, and he lived his life differently. And it's just like, man, what was that? What was that really like? And I wouldn't have asked him that when I was 6. So.
No. And now you can ask him, did you do things differently because you had a big set of cojones? Or did you do things because that was just what you did?
Yeah.
Those are great. That is why I do this podcast. On the surface, you want to talk to your grandfather. We've found out so much more about why we want to talk to the great-grandfather.
Yeah.
Okay, so the third question. What is one underappreciated or quirky thing about agriculture that more people should know?
Ooh. Not to be crude, but some of the topics that we cover in agriculture, if you took it out of context, would be really, really strange. We can just talk about reproduction with livestock and semen and all of that. And for any other industry, imagine being a banker trying to talk about something like that. Like, no, you can't do that. You get sent straight to HR. But in agriculture, that's just normal. And so sometimes you just got to stop and be like, wow, this is, what an interesting world we live in.
It's about 10 or 12 years ago, we had rabbits. We still have some rabbits. And we had them in the shed, and we bred silver foxes. And this was time of year where we had to breed rabbits for forage fair. And we put the buck in with the doe, and of the Doing with the Buck, and we're doing chores in this little shed. We just had, and then all of a sudden I hear Shelby saying, "Hey, Daddy, I think he nailed her."
Had a girl.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that was Welcome to Farm Life. He nailed her.
Yeah. You got the job done.
Got the job done. Yeah. So Hayden, what do you think is something quirky or interesting that people need to know about ag?
Mm-hmm.
Any suggestions for me?
This is almost like a scene from the dating game.
Yeah.
You look at each other. You said that? You said that? I can't believe you said that.
Yeah. That was mine. That was the first one that came to mind was quirky and weird.
I think how much I talk to people about money and how much money you're making and losing, kind of like reproduction. But it's like if I went up to a mechanic and was talking about how much he'd charge for an oil change and how much it cost him to do it and his overhead and that, and that's, I don't feel like they probably do, but that would be maybe a little bit less interesting. Or like someone talking about comparing two different loans at a bank, like, well, that would be like, I feel like that's a little more taboo than me talking about two different farms that are, one's yielding better than the other one, but this one costs less and this one's closer. And something else that people need to know about agriculture is there is a lot of really good books and YouTube that you should check out, and podcasts. Like, go listen to them. That's a great resource that you can consume while you are operating or doing chores or driving or whatever.
Mm-hmm. That was a good one.
That is those are both good ones.
I mean, you're so good at this.
Yeah, man. Come out of your shell a little bit, bud. What is your favorite ag-related tool, product, or innovation?
Heated seats.
Heated seats.
Heated seats. Because there is nothing better than when we were scooping out bunks during that blizzard and we got back in the pickup and the heated seat went on, and that was luxury right there. So it might be basic, but like I said,
there you go.
My stainless steel water jug, my Leatherman multi-tool, and my iPhone are probably my top three. Those are very, like, gotta have it kind of tools for me.
You're not the first one to bring up iPhone.
Yeah, I use it for so much.
I interviewed Paul Butler the other day, and he's a software engineer, so he deals with high-powered computers and language. And he started in the 80s with an Atari 2600. I've got mine sitting on the shelf back here. And the power that you have in your iPhone, we can't contemplate just how much power you have in your hand. And it's just it's amazing what we can do. And it doesn't matter if it's an iPhone or Android. It's amazing what we can do with that phone, and the decisions that we can make. I mean, I can get on my ADM app and I can make a contract for corn this year.
Yeah,
with a few clicks, boom, 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 boom.
And how affordable it is.
Yeah,
to have that much power and it not be something astronomical and something you can. You pay, you just do it, and you don't really think twice about it. Is amazing.
I took pictures of a ewe that was having problems, and I sent it to my vet, and he responded back, "Hey, I think this is happening. Give her this."
Yep.
Like, it's just unbelievable. I take pictures of stuff all the time and come back going, "Oh," and that's just simple. That's just a picture. It's not the really fancy stuff we can do with a phone anymore. That's a great one.
More interesting one that other people haven't heard about would be a really good electric fence charger, and this little doodad that I put on my water tank for my garden hose going to a float. It's called a freeze miser.
Oh, yes.
And it screws onto a Y valve or onto a garden hose or whatever. And it starts squirting water out when it gets cold. And when it warms up, the water, it stops. And it keeps my garden hose from freezing up. And it works pretty darn good. It's made our life
Miser.
much
I like
better.
that. I've got a drawer full of them.
Saved my bacon a few times this winter.
Mhm.
I'll almost guarantee you the only person to bring up freeze miser. Yes. So
I
the last question.
think about that a lot, and it's just something I want other people to know because it's brought me a lot of ease in my life.
And the cool thing about that's just metallurgy chemistry.
Yeah, there's no electricity, and they're not that expensive. Like it just works pretty darn good.
Yeah, and that's somebody going, oh, the freeze property of this metal mimics water, but it's just a little bit different. But there had to have been a need, and it was a need that we had this water going to stock tanks that freeze. Isn't that crazy? We came up with that. And that's chemistry.
Yeah.
Or physics. Yeah.
Science is crazy.
Yeah.
Science,
man.
What is one small change that could make a huge impact in the future of ag?
Ooh.
Would this be a fun place to say getting rid of crop insurance? Is that a small change or that'd be a big one?
Heaters.
If you wanted to open up that can of worms, you should have done it an hour and 25 minutes ago.
Yeah, it's too late now. Yeah,
Would
gotta
you
go.
look at that? Oh man, run out of time here. Gosh. Well, I'm glad you said that because mine's kind of like get more markets. Go make more trade happen. Go make trade.
Build demand.
Build demand, exactly. It doesn't.
Which is interesting coming off of your time at Commodity Classic.
Yes. Yeah, that's my go-to. I'm about ready to make t-shirts and be like, go make trade. Go. It doesn't matter if it doesn't rain, and it doesn't matter if grain doesn't make money. Like, none of this matters. But,
cool. I like that one. Build more markets.
Build more
because we got to. We're good at growing stuff.
Oh, we're great at growing stuff.
We just need to be better at selling stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. So,
and I'll be interested to see what tariffs do.
I know. It scares me from a production side, but and this might sound a little crazy, but I almost trust Donald Trump from a business perspective enough that he has a game plan that I have a little bit of hope still. A little bit of hope that there's something behind this that we're not going to be able to see from a public perspective. And we can speculate day in, day out on what that's going to be, but...
Yep. So I posted on Facebook last week or yesterday or whenever it was that I'm just scrolling past stuff. I got people that love Trump. I got people that hate Trump. Mm-hmm. And they all post stuff. I just scroll past it.
Yeah.
Because I can't change it. I can get mad about it.
Yeah.
I could be happy about it. I'm still not going to change it. But here's what we have to do, and you, Hayden, as a farmer, and I have to do. We just have to adapt.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That's all. It's just the way it is. Oh.
Adapt or die.
Yeah. And I got to adapt this year. So there you go.
Yeah.
Well, Hayden and Mary, this has been great. As I said, we need to get together on some specific topics. Thank you for taking time out of your busy schedule on a Friday. I am looking forward to watching you grow more and watching how you continue to diversify within your diversification and how that makes you better farmers. And Mary, every time you post something on Instagram or TikTok of a video or a picture you take it, I am just in awe. And the request I made last year of you coming to do a photo shoot in spring or fall for us still stands. So if we can work it out, maybe I could hook it up and you can do Plotner at the same time.
That would be perfect.
We're only an hour and 45 minutes apart. 2 hours maybe.
That's cool.
Yeah, I forgot you guys are so close.
Yeah, we are. Yeah. Well, to my audience, thank you for listening to this great conversation with two up-and-coming, aspiring farmers that should be an inspiration to anybody in ag for the way that they've taken what God has given them and turned it into something bigger. And I think the message that we need to take from our discussion with Hayden and Mary is how we can diversify in both thought, in practice, and in finances so that we can stay on the farm and make the farm better. Look forward to more episodes where we look for those nuggets of wisdom, those little obscure things that make people special, and more importantly, how their ag roots set them up to be successful in their careers and life.